Hugo De Garis works in robotics, and he's also quite closely linked to Ben Goertzel. He's going to talk to us about the future transhumanism, cyborgism.
You talk about the cosmists, the Terrans, and the cyborgs. What are these human groups, and what are their priorities and their ideological arguments?
Imagine 2020s, 2030s, certainly 2040s, then this whole issue of species dominance will be very much in the air. It'll just be part of any educated person's general knowledge, right? Like if you go back 5 years from now being 2010.
So we're now in 2021. In 2021, we are already talking about biodigital convergence. It's right here, biodigital convergence, and that is at horizons.gc.ca. That's www. And you can see here, in the coming years, biodigital technologies could be woven into our lives in the way that digital technologies are now. Biological and digital systems are now converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species. So he's talking about species as in technological makeover, as in putting technology into them. We are talking, or they are talking about species as in creating some sort of link between biology and technology. So you could have a technological species, and you could also have a biological species, which is an evolution of the human species, which has been done not by nature but by technology.
If you ask people about global warming, climate change, they'd have to scratch their heads. I mean, only a small number of people would have been familiar with the issue. But today, you can't avoid it, right? I mean, the media is so full of it.
And so in the past, it was about global environmentalism. Now, what's coming into the modern vocabulary is transhumanism, post-humanism. Speciesism is a little bit behind.
So any educated person knows about these things. Well, I'm guessing within 5 years from now, a similar phenomenon will have occurred on the issue of species dominance, because the media around the world, at least in English-speaking countries, is really starting to bite on this issue. Right? So imagine then millions, probably billions of people with their own home robots, and they're talking to their machines and so on.
I just wanted to interject. We are not actually at the moment talking a lot about these things, but we are preparing humans to accept it. We are bringing in the psychology in order to get people to be more open. For instance, in schools, we are allowing children to change sexuality. So we're allowing people to be fluid within their sexuality, and we're going to get people to be fluid within their humanity. So when we look at a human and they've changed from a heterosexual to a bisexual to a transsexual to a homosexual to a gender fluid to polysexual, or whatever sexual it is, we may be looking at humans in the future and we'll be saying, well, that's a cyborg, that's a Terran, that's a humanist, that's a whatever. And so at the moment, just as it's becoming illegal and there's lots of protections in order to protect different sexualities, which is a part of humanity, in the future you're going to get lots of laws and protections which are going to protect different types of humans. And I believe that this is starting to happen. If you look at synthetic meat, we're starting to go away from killing animals. Why is that? Because if a human which has more intelligence than an animal has a right to kill an animal, in the future, if you create humans that are far more intelligent than a cow to a human, than from a human to the new cyber intellect, that new cyber intellect might have authority or an argument to hurt us, kill us, or eat us because we are of lower intelligence. In the same manner, we think that we have authority to kill animals because they are of lower intelligence. And if you start to talk about consciousness, then perhaps we think as humans that animals are lower consciousness. But if we build people through genetic modification or through technology that, let's say, have a greater capacity for consciousness, because we believe that consciousness is in the brain. So if we could create a brain that has or enabled more consciousness, then if our laws state that a higher conscious being can kill a lower conscious being, and we create higher conscious beings, then we're putting ourselves in the oven to be cooked, because we will be lower consciousness.
Millions, probably billions of people with their own home robots, and they're talking to their machines and so on, and they're noticing that the intelligence of these machines keeps increasing year by year. So then the politics will start. People will start taking... They'll no longer consider this question of, you know, should human beings become number 2 species on the planet. That will no longer be a science fiction type question. It will become more and more real, right? Because people will see with their own eyes that their own machines, their household machines, are getting smarter and smarter every year.
So he talks about the politics coming in. Well, the politics at the moment, which is apparent, is the wokeness, which is the atomization of the human. It's attacking the white man, attacking the black man, attacking the female, attacking with the transgender. And we're starting to censor ourselves. No longer is it important for facts to exist. It's only important for feelings and your emotions to exist. And this wokeness is coming in and redefining politics and who we are and what we are. And so I wonder if, in order to bring in these new ideologies of accepting the technological age and the technological creatures in the future, you need to start bringing in an ideology like wokeness, which starts to take to bits very slowly the humans, so that they start to become less confident in themselves and then feel that they ought to welcome in other ideas, ideologies, and creatures. So we're welcoming in the transhuman, we're welcoming in people changing sex, we're welcoming in transgender, we're welcoming in people with body dysmorphia, we're welcoming in people that want to tattoo their faces and chop bits off their faces. And all this needs to be accepted to such an extent that adults that have children that have changed gender get angry if a heterosexual person would not go out with one of those children. So, for instance, in the newspapers in England the other day, a father who had a son and the son changed to a girl was speaking to some people that said that they didn't want to go out with his son because she was originally a boy, and he got very angry. So there's sort of a pressure being put onto the heterosexual to accept people that were once not the opposite sex, and feeling that it's okay to sort of go out with them. And this sort of fluidity around identity, I think, is going to contribute to the acceptance of the new technologies being put into humanity.
So once people start taking it seriously, and millions of people, then you'll start getting the politics occurring. So what political groups is it can we expect? So I need to introduce some labels now. So those people in favour of building these godlike creatures, these artilects, I call them cosmists. So the ideology in favour of building artilects is cosmism, as an ism, right? And why that word? Why? So obviously based on the word cosmos. Well, it's the big picture, right? And there are the whole series of arguments that the cosmists will use in favour of pushing cosmism. And one of them, of course, is, well, there's the whole universe out there, right? There's a cosmos.
So let's look at Elon Musk. See, Elon Musk is doing two things. He's building Neuralink. Neuralink is basically empowering humans to be better than themselves, transhuman, which will lead to post-human. But also what Elon Musk is doing is he is going to Mars. So this idea of cosmists, this idea of going out into space, this idea of enhancing the human body and leaving Earth and going somewhere else is in its infancy already. It's what exactly Elon Musk is doing by building the Neuralink and then building settlements on other planets in order for that science to evolve and amplify. And one of the key reasons why it's going to is because in order to live in Mars, you need to remodify the body. Because on Mars, the gravity won't let you give birth, so therefore you'd have to make the body stronger to give birth, or it would be much more easy to give birth outside of the human. Also, your eyesight would go because of the rays, the gamma rays, because there's no atmosphere to protect you. And also, cancer would be much higher because of that. And if you were not to live on the surface in order to protect yourself, you'd live underground. And if you lived underground, then the light would be different and you'd need to have different type of eyes, so you'd have modification for that as well. So the modification is in the process of happening, and the legitimacy and the authority to allow it to happen would be being on another planet. Just in the same way, the authority and the legitimacy to change your RNA or DNA is apparent with little squirty liquids in syringes that you put into your system in order to save humanity against the virus. Mars is there to save humanity against itself, or to save humanity against an asteroid. And so the genetic modification and transhumanism, posthumanism, and cyborgism would be okay there to do that, just in the same way as it's okay here to do that against an illness, which apparently is happening in 2021.
And if humanity decides to build these artefacts, then very likely the domain of the artefacts will be the cosmos, right? I mean, there's a huge cosmos out there. Why should the artefacts remain on our tiny little speck of a planet, in one tiny little speck of a solar system, which in just one galaxy of billions that we know of, and for all we know, there may be other universes in the multiverse. So the big picture says that it's highly unlikely that the artefacts will simply decide to stay on the Earth. So